The night before I agreed to my daughter-in-law's investment plan, my late husband appeared in a nightmare warning. Don't invest. I jolted awake in a cold sweat as I was set to transfer my savings the next day. That morning, the truth left me frozen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I woke, gasping in the dark, my nightgown soaked through, Thomas's voice still echoing in my ears. Don't do it, Suzanne. Don't give her a single cent. My husband had been dead for 18 months, but in that nightmare, he'd been as real as the day we married 43 years ago. His face contorted with urgency, his hand gripping my wrist so tightly I could still feel the phantom pressure. The bedside clock read 3:47 a.m. In less than 6 hours, I was supposed to wire $230,000 to my daughter-in-law's company, my entire life savings. I sat up slowly, my 72-year-old joints protesting, and turned on the lamp. The farmhouse bedroom looked exactly as it had every night since Thomas passed. His reading glasses still on the nightstand, his flannel robe hanging behind the door. But something felt different now. Wrong. The investment documents lay on my dresser where I'd left them, crisp and professional in their leather portfolio. Riverside Capital Growth Partners, the embossed logo read. My son Kurt's wife, Beatrice, had presented them to me 3 weeks ago over Sunday dinner, her manicured nails tapping the glossy prospectus as she'd explained the incredible opportunity. Mom, this is a chance to triple your money in 2 years, Kurt had said, his arm around Beatrice's shoulders. Bee's been building this for 5 years. Her clients are seeing returns that would make Wall Street jealous. Beatrice had smiled, all white teeth and confidence. Suzanne, I wouldn't even be offering this to you if I didn't consider you family. These investment slots are reserved for high-net-worth individuals. But when Kurt told me about your situation, the farm expenses, the property taxes, I knew I had to help. She'd made it sound like charity, not an investment pitch. I'd hesitated initially. Thomas had always handled our finances, and after his death, I'd felt lost navigating bank statements and investment accounts. But Kurt had insisted. Mom, you can't just let that money sit in a savings account earning nothing. Dad would want you to be smart about this. Would he, though? I got out of bed and retrieved the documents, spreading them across the kitchen table downstairs. The house was silent except for the October wind rattling the windows of our 100-acre farm outside of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This land had been in Thomas's family for 3 generations. We'd raised Kurt here, weathered droughts and floods, celebrated harvests and mourned losses. And now, apparently, I was ready to gamble it all away. The prospectus was impressive, full of charts showing steady growth, testimonials from satisfied investors, and photographs of Beatrice at various business conferences, always impeccably dressed, always smiling. The promised returns were 18% annually, conservative estimates, according to the fine print. I made coffee and read through everything again. Something Beatrice had said during dinner nagged at me. We need your commitment by Tuesday, Suzanne. This investment cycle closes at noon, and the next one won't open for 6 months. Urgency, pressure, a deadline. Thomas's dream voice echoed again. Don't do it. At 7 o'clock, I called Kurt. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. Mom? What's wrong? I'm not feeling well, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach had been churning since I woke. I need to postpone the transfer, just for a few days. Silence. Then, Mom, we talked about this. The deadline is today. I understand, but I need more time. I'm feeling dizzy, confused. Are you having a medical emergency? Should I come over? No, I just need rest. Tell Beatrice I'm sorry, but I can't make any decisions when I'm not myself. Another pause. Let me talk to her. I'll call you back. He hung up without saying goodbye. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Beatrice this time, her voice honey smooth. Suzanne, Kurt told me you're not feeling well. I'm so sorry to hear that. But I have to be honest. If you miss this deadline, I can't guarantee another opportunity. My other investors are depending on me to close this cycle. I need to see my doctor, I said firmly. I'm 72 years old, Beatrice. I can't make financial decisions when I'm unwell. A beat of silence. Of course. Your health comes first. But Suzanne, you should know. Several people are interested in your slot. If you withdraw, I'll have to offer it to someone else. I'm not withdrawing. I'm asking for a week. I'll see what I can do. Her voice had cooled considerably. Feel better, Suzanne. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Thomas had never liked Beatrice, though he'd been too polite to say so directly. She's very ambitious, he'd said once, after a particularly tense Thanksgiving dinner. Reminds me of a fox in a henhouse. I'd defended her at the time. Kurt seemed happy, and they'd given us 2 beautiful grandchildren. Who was I to judge? But now, alone in the farmhouse with Thomas's warning still fresh in my mind, I wondered what else I'd been too polite to see. I spent the morning going through Thomas's old files. He'd kept meticulous records of everything: farm expenses, tax returns, correspondence with the bank. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I found a locked metal box I'd never noticed before. The key wasn't in his desk. I searched for an hour before finding it taped inside the old Bible on his nightstand, the one he'd inherited from his father. Inside the box were documents I'd never seen: property deeds, insurance policies, and a sealed envelope with my name written in Thomas's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Suzanne, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're looking for answers. I'm sorry I never told you about the box. Some things I wanted to protect you from. First, the farm is paid off completely. I never told you because I didn't want Kurt to know. He's been asking about selling it for years, and I was afraid if he knew there was no mortgage, the pressure would increase. Second, I've set up a trust. The documents are in this box. It ensures the farm stays in your name alone, and upon your death, it goes to our grandchildren, not Kurt. I love our son, but he's not ready for this responsibility. Third, be careful about money matters. Kurt married a woman who values success over integrity. Watch your accounts. Trust your instincts. I love you forever, Thomas. I read the letter 3 times, my vision blurring with tears. The trust documents were real. I recognized our lawyer's signature, dated 2 months before Thomas's death. He'd known. Somehow he'd known I'd need protection. From my own family. I was still sitting there when someone knocked on the front door. Through the window, I saw Beatrice's silver Mercedes in the driveway. She'd come for the money herself. I folded Thomas's letter carefully and tucked it into my cardigan pocket. Then I went to face my daughter-in-law, my heart pounding, knowing that somewhere in those investment documents was a lie. I just had to find it before it was too late. I opened the door to find Beatrice standing on my porch, looking every inch the successful businesswoman in her tailored navy suit and pearl earrings. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were calculating, scanning my face for weakness. Suzanne, I was so worried about you, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Kurt said you weren't feeling well, and I thought I should check on you personally. After all, we're family. That's very kind, but unnecessary, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just need rest. She moved into the living room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors Thomas had refinished the summer before he died. Of course. But I brought the paperwork anyway, just in case you're feeling better. Sometimes these spells pass quickly, don't they? I watched her set her leather briefcase on the coffee table, the same one where she'd presented the investment opportunity 3 weeks ago. Her movements were practiced, efficient. She'd done this before. Beatrice, I meant what I said. I need time. Absolutely. She sat on the sofa, crossing her legs. But since I'm here, maybe we could just review the details one more time? Sometimes talking things through helps with anxiety. Is that what you're experiencing? Anxiety about the investment? There it was. The subtle suggestion that my hesitation was emotional, irrational, a symptom of age rather than wisdom. I'm not anxious, I said, settling into Thomas's old recliner. I'm being careful. Of course you are. You're a sensible woman. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a fresh set of documents. But Suzanne, I need you to understand something. This opportunity closes today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. My other investors have already committed, and the fund structure requires everyone to enter simultaneously. Why? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Why what? Why does everyone need to invest at the same time? Why can't money be added gradually? She laughed, a tinkling sound that didn't reach her eyes. It's complicated financial structuring. The fund operates in cycles to maximize returns. Think of it like planting season. You can't plant crops in October and expect the same harvest as spring planting, right? The farming analogy was condescending, meant to make me feel understood. Instead, it made me suspicious. Beatrice had never shown the slightest interest in agriculture before. "I'd like to speak with some of your other investors," I said. "The ones giving testimonials in your prospectus." Her smile tightened. "That's not really possible. Client confidentiality, you understand. These are high net worth individuals who value their privacy. But they gave testimonials. Anonymous testimonials, yes. That's standard practice." I leaned forward. "Beatrice, I'm not trying to be difficult. But this is my life savings. Surely you can understand why I'd want to verify." "Are you suggesting I'm lying?" Her voice had gone cold, all pretense of warmth evaporating. "After everything I've done for this family? The way I've welcomed you, included you in our lives, taken care of Kurt? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking reasonable questions." She stood abruptly, gathering her documents. "You know what I think, Suzanne? I think you've never respected me. You've always seen me as some gold digger who trapped your precious son. Well, Kurt chose me. He believes in me. And if you can't support our family, maybe you should say so directly instead of hiding behind fake illness and skepticism." The attack was so sudden, so aggressive, that I felt my face flush. "That's not fair. What's not fair is you wasting my time." She snapped her briefcase closed. "I have real investors who trust me, who see my value. I don't need to beg for your participation. In fact, you know what? Consider the offer withdrawn. I'll call Kurt and tell him his mother isn't interested in our success." She was at the door before I could respond, her hand on the knob. But she paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You're going to regret this, Suzanne. When you're sitting in this big empty house, watching your savings lose value to inflation, you'll remember this moment, and you'll realize you chose pride over family." Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. I sat in the sudden silence, my heart racing. That hadn't been the reaction of a legitimate businesswoman facing reasonable questions. That had been rage, defensive, aggressive rage. My phone rang 15 minutes later. Kurt, predictably. "Mom, what the hell did you say to Beatrice? She's crying in the car. She said you accused her of fraud." "I did no such thing. I asked to speak with her other investors and she became hostile." "Because you insulted her. This is her business, Mom, her reputation. You basically called her a liar." "Kurt, I asked a simple question. You know what? I'm done. Beatrice tried to help you and you threw it back in her face. Fine, keep your money. But don't expect us to come running when you need help with the farm expenses or property taxes. You want to do this alone? Be alone." He hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling the sting of my son's words. But beneath the hurt was something else. Certainty. Beatrice's reaction had confirmed my instincts. Something was very wrong with that investment. I just needed to prove it. Thomas's letter had mentioned watching my accounts. I opened my laptop, a recent purchase Kurt had helped me set up, and logged into my bank's website. Everything looked normal at first. My checking account, savings account, and the investment account Thomas had established years ago. But then I noticed something odd. 3 weeks ago, the same day Beatrice had first presented her proposal, someone had requested access to view my accounts. The bank had sent me an email about it, which I'd apparently missed in the flood of spam. The request had come from Riverside Capital Growth Partners, Account Verification Services. I hadn't authorized that. I called the bank immediately, waiting through the automated system until I reached a human being. "This is Suzanne Foster. I need to speak with someone about an unauthorized access request to my accounts." The representative was polite but firm. "Let me pull up your records, Mrs. Foster. Can you verify your account number and security questions?" After confirming my identity, she said, "I see the request you're referring to. It was submitted with your signature authorization 3 weeks ago. That's impossible. I never signed anything. One moment, please. Keyboard clicking. The authorization form was submitted electronically through our secure portal. It shows your email address and security code. My stomach dropped. I didn't submit anything. Can you send me a copy? I'll email it right now. The document arrived while I was still on the phone. I opened it with trembling hands. There was my name, my email address, and what appeared to be my signature, but I'd never seen this form before in my life. This is fraud, I said to the representative. Someone forged my authorization. That's a serious allegation, Mrs. Foster. Have you shared your login information with anyone? I thought about Kurt helping me set up the laptop, walking me through passwords and security questions. Had Beatrice been there? I couldn't remember. I need to freeze all my accounts immediately, I said, and I need to file a fraud report. I can certainly help with that. However, I should inform you that we received another request this morning. A wire transfer authorization for $230,000 to Riverside Capital Growth Partners. It's currently pending approval. The room tilted. Cancel it. Cancel it right now. Mrs. Foster, the authorization has your electronic signature and two-factor authentication code. Are you saying you didn't initiate this transfer? I am absolutely saying that. Someone has stolen my identity. The representative's voice became more serious. I'm going to connect you with our fraud department immediately. Please don't hang up. While I waited on hold, I pulled up my email and searched for anything from Riverside Capital. There were dozens of messages I'd never seen before. Confirmation receipts, account statements, investment updates. All dated over the past 3 weeks. All marked as read, though I'd never opened them. Someone had access to more than my bank accounts. They had access to my entire digital life. A new voice came on the line, deep and professional. Mrs. Foster, this is Samuel Rodriguez from Fraud Investigation. I understand you're reporting unauthorized account activity. I explained everything. The investment proposal, Beatrice's pressure, the forged authorizations, the pending wire transfer. He listened without interrupting. Mrs. Foster, I'm going to be direct with you. What you're describing sounds like affinity fraud, when someone uses a family or social connection to commit financial crimes. We've seen an increase in these cases. The good news is, we caught this before the transfer completed. The bad news is that someone has compromised your digital security significantly. Can you stop the transfer? Already done. I've frozen all your accounts temporarily. But Mrs. Foster, you need to file a police report immediately. And I strongly recommend you consult with a lawyer. If your daughter-in-law has your personal information, she could attempt other forms of fraud. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence on my laptop screen. Beatrice hadn't just asked for an investment. She'd been systematically positioning herself to steal everything I had. And Kurt had helped her, knowingly or not. My phone buzzed. A text from Beatrice. I hope you're satisfied, Suzanne. You've destroyed your relationship with your son over paranoia and greed. Kurt deserves better than a mother who can't trust his family. I typed back. I've reported the fraudulent wire transfer to the bank's fraud department. They're investigating everything. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing, then disappeared. No response came. I looked at Thomas's letter again, still in my pocket. Be careful about money matters. Kurt married a woman who values success over integrity. He'd known. But how much had he known? And how long had this been planned? The front door opened suddenly, and I jumped. Kurt stood in the doorway, his face flushed with anger. Mom, we need to talk. Right now. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood a man in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. He had the look of a lawyer, or something worse. Suzanne Foster? The man said, stepping forward. My name is Richard Tate. I'm legal counsel for Riverside Capital Growth Partners. We need to discuss some very serious allegations you've made against my client. I stood slowly, keeping the kitchen table between myself and the 2 men. Richard Tate had the polished look of someone who billed by the quarter hour. Silver hair, perfect teeth, and a suit that probably cost more than my monthly farm expenses. I haven't made allegations, I said, keeping my voice level. I've reported facts to my bank's fraud department. Tate smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Foster, I'm going to be very clear with you. My client, Beatrice Foster, has built a reputable business over 5 years. Your accusations of fraud are not only false but actionable. Defamation of character, tortious interference with business relationships. These are serious legal matters. Mom, just listen to him, Kurt said, his voice strained. You're making a terrible mistake. The mistake would be allowing an unauthorized wire transfer of my life savings. I looked at my son, trying to find the boy I'd raised in this angry stranger's face. Kurt, the bank found a forged authorization in my name. Someone tried to steal $230,000 from me this morning. That's absurd, Tate interjected smoothly. Mrs. Foster, you electronically signed multiple documents authorizing both account verification and fund transfer. You attended 3 consultation meetings with Mrs. Beatrice Foster. You expressed enthusiasm about the investment opportunity. And now, at the last moment, you're experiencing what appears to be cognitive confusion and paranoia. The implication hit me like a slap. You're suggesting I'm senile. I'm suggesting that perhaps you're not equipped to make complex financial decisions anymore. It happens to many people your age. There's no shame in it. Kurt shifted uncomfortably. Mom, maybe we should talk about getting you some help. Doctor Patterson could evaluate. I don't need evaluation. I need you to listen. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from the bank. Look at this authorization form. Look at the date. I was at Jenny Morrison's funeral that day. You were there with me, Kurt. I never went near a computer. Kurt took my phone reluctantly, his face creasing as he read. For a moment, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Tate moved quickly. Electronic signatures can be executed from anywhere, Mrs. Foster. From a phone. A tablet. I don't have a tablet. And I didn't sign this. I turned to Kurt. Son, you know me. Have I ever shown signs of confusion? Have I ever forgotten important things or made irrational decisions? You forgot Ella's birthday last month, he said quietly. My breath caught. What? Ella's birthday. September 15th. You didn't call, didn't send a card. When I mentioned it, you didn't remember. Kurt, Ella's birthday is September 25th. I sent her card a week early because I was worried about mail delays. You're the one who has the date wrong. He blinked, uncertainty crossing his face. Tate stepped in again. Regardless of these family matters, Mrs. Foster, we're here about the business situation. You've made serious allegations against my client. The bank has launched an investigation based on your claims. This has already damaged Mrs. Beatrice Foster's reputation and business relationships. 3 investors have pulled out this morning, citing concerns about the company's legitimacy. Good, I said flatly. If the company is legitimate, an investigation will prove it. If it's not, those investors should run. You don't understand the position you've put yourself in. Tate opened his briefcase and removed a document. This is a cease and desist letter. You are to make no further statements about Riverside Capital Growth Partners or Mrs. Beatrice Foster. You are to retract your fraud claims with the bank, and you are to issue a written apology. Or what? Or will pursue legal action for defamation and file a petition for emergency guardianship, claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage your own affairs. We have documentation of your confusion. The investment authorization you claim not to remember, missed family obligations, and increasingly erratic behavior according to your son's testimony. I looked at Kurt. You'd do that? You'd have me declared incompetent? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, if you're sick, we need to help you. I'm not sick. I'm being robbed. Tate placed the document on my kitchen table. You have 24 hours to sign this cease and desist and retract your statements. If you don't, we'll have no choice but to take more aggressive action. Mrs. Foster, I've handled many cases involving elderly individuals who become paranoid and accusatory. The courts are very familiar with this pattern. For your own protection, I'd advise you to cooperate. He gestured to Kurt, and they turned toward the door. Kurt, I called after them. Your father left me a letter. He warned me about this. My son paused, his hand on the doorknob. Dad's been gone for 18 months, Mom. Maybe you dreamed that too. After they left, I stood in my empty kitchen shaking. They weren't just trying to steal my money anymore. They were trying to steal my autonomy, my credibility, my very sanity. I needed help. Real help. I called my lawyer, Howard Brennan, who'd handled Thomas's estate. His secretary said he was in court but would call me back. Then I called the Lancaster Police Department and asked to file a fraud report. The officer who answered took my information but sounded skeptical. "Ma'am, if this involves family members, it's usually a civil matter, not criminal. You might want to consult with a lawyer first. Someone forged my signature and tried to wire transfer my life savings. That's identity theft and attempted fraud. Did the transfer go through? No, but then no crime was completed. Look, I can send someone out to take a report, but honestly, if it's your daughter-in-law and your son was involved in setting up your accounts, this sounds like a family dispute over money. Those are better handled in civil court." After I hung up, I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. The system wasn't set up to protect people like me. Elderly victims of family fraud were dismissed as confused, emotional, or vindictive. My laptop chimed. An email from Howard Brennan's secretary. He was available for an emergency consultation at 4 o'clock. I confirmed immediately. While I waited, I went through Thomas's locked box again, reading the trust documents more carefully. My husband had been thorough. The farm couldn't be sold or transferred without my explicit consent, witnessed by both Howard Brennan and an independent notary. Upon my death, it went directly to our grandchildren, Ella and Mason, in a trust they couldn't access until age 25. Kurt wasn't mentioned at all. There was another document I'd missed before, a power of attorney form that Thomas had prepared but never executed. The designated agent was his brother, my brother-in-law Robert, with a note in Thomas's handwriting. "Only if Suzanne is truly incapacitated and agrees. Robert will protect her interests." I hadn't spoken to Robert in months. He lived in Philadelphia, ran a small accounting firm, and had never gotten along particularly well with Kurt. At family gatherings, there'd always been tension. Robert thought Kurt was spoiled and directionless, while Kurt thought Robert was judgmental and cold. But Thomas had trusted him. I called Robert's office. He answered on the second ring. "Suzanne? Is everything all right?" "No." My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. "Robert, I need help." I told him everything. The investment proposal, the forged documents, the attempted wire transfer, the lawyer's threats. He listened silently, and I could hear him typing notes. "Suzanne, send me everything you have. Every document, every email, every text message. I'll review it tonight. Beatrice's lawyer is threatening to have me declared incompetent. Let him try. I've seen actual cognitive decline and I've seen fraud. You sound perfectly lucid to me, but we need to move fast. If they file for guardianship, defending yourself becomes much harder. What should I do? First, change all your passwords, everything. Email, bank accounts, phone. Use passwords Kurt couldn't guess. Second, enable two-factor authentication on everything. Third, get a new phone number and don't give it to Kurt or Beatrice. Fourth, document everything from this point forward. Every interaction, every threat, every communication. They're my family, Robert. I know, I'm sorry. But right now, they're also your adversaries. After we hung up, I spent 2 hours changing passwords and security settings. I discovered more disturbing evidence in the process. My email had been forwarded to an external address for the past month. Every message I'd sent or received had been copied to an account I didn't recognize. The address was email protected, a burner email, probably created specifically for surveillance. Someone had been watching me, reading my correspondence, monitoring my financial activities for weeks, long before Beatrice had officially made her investment pitch. This wasn't opportunistic fraud. This was premeditated. I was forwarding everything to Robert when I heard a car in the driveway again. Through the window, I saw not Beatrice's Mercedes, but a white van with Lancaster County Adult Protective Services printed on the side. My blood ran cold. A woman in her 40s got out, carrying a clipboard and a concerned expression. She knocked on my door before I could decide what to do. "Mrs. Foster? I'm Christine Wallace from Adult Protective Services. We received a report of concern about your welfare. May I come in? A report from whom? I'm not at liberty to say. But we take all reports seriously, especially regarding vulnerable seniors living alone. I'm not vulnerable. I'm being victimized by my daughter-in-law. Christine's expression shifted to one I recognized from Tate's face earlier, polite skepticism mixed with practiced sympathy. I understand you're upset. That's exactly why I'm here. May I come in? This will be much easier if we can have a calm conversation. I had no choice. Refusing entry would only make me look paranoid and uncooperative. I stepped aside and she entered, her eyes immediately scanning the room, looking for signs of neglect, hoarding, or instability. She wouldn't find any. My house was clean and organized, the bills paid, the refrigerator stocked. I was old, not incompetent. But I was beginning to understand that in the eyes of the system, those two things looked dangerously similar. Mrs. Foster, I need to ask you some questions. How are you feeling today? Any confusion? Disorientation? I feel like I'm being set up. She made a note on her clipboard. Can you tell me what day it is? Friday, November 19th. And before you ask, the president is Trump. I know my address, and I can count backward from 100 by 7s if you'd like. That won't be necessary. But she didn't look reassured. Mrs. Foster, have you been experiencing any conflicts with family members? Yes. My daughter-in-law tried to steal my life savings, and now she's trying to have me declared incompetent so I can't report her crimes. Christine's pen paused over her clipboard. That's a very serious accusation. It's the truth. I have documentation. Mrs. Foster, I'm going to be honest with you. The report we received indicated you've been making paranoid accusations against family members, that you're exhibiting signs of cognitive decline, and that you may be a danger to yourself. A danger to myself? That's ridiculous. The report mentioned you've stopped taking medications. I don't take any medications except vitamins. That you've been talking about seeing your deceased husband. I had a nightmare. One nightmare. And that you've been making irrational financial decisions and then claiming not to remember them. I stared at her. This is exactly what they want. They report me to you. I look defensive and paranoid, and suddenly I need a guardian. My daughter-in-law becomes that guardian, and she takes control of my assets. It's a perfect scheme. Christine's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Foster, you seem very articulate and aware, but I do need to complete my assessment. Would you be willing to see a doctor for a cognitive evaluation, just to establish a baseline? Only if it's a doctor I choose, not one Beatrice recommends. That's fair. I can provide you with a list of independent geriatric specialists. She spent another 20 minutes asking questions, examining my medications, checking the kitchen and bathroom for safety hazards. Finally, she handed me her card. Mrs. Foster, I don't see any immediate concerns. You clearly have capacity and are taking care of yourself. However, given the allegations on both sides, I'd strongly recommend that evaluation. And if you genuinely believe you're a victim of financial exploitation, you should contact an attorney immediately. I have one. Meeting him this afternoon. After she left, I sat down and allowed myself 30 seconds of despair. Then I pulled out my phone and sent Robert a text from my new number. They called Adult Protective Services on me. This is worse than I thought. His response came immediately. Don't panic. That's a standard intimidation tactic. Hold steady. I'm finding something interesting in the documents you sent. Very interesting. I looked at the clock. 45 minutes until my meeting with Howard Brennan. And then, somehow, I would have to prove that I wasn't crazy. That the danger I sensed wasn't paranoia, but perception. That Thomas's warning in my nightmare had been my own subconscious, recognizing what my conscious mind hadn't wanted to see. That I was being hunted. Howard Brennan's office smelled of old leather and furniture polish, a comforting scent that reminded me of Thomas's study. Howard himself was 76, sharp-eyed despite his age, with a reputation for being meticulous and utterly incorruptible. He'd known my husband for 40 years. Suzanne, sit down, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his mahogany desk. I've read the documents you emailed. We have a problem. I know. Beatrice is trying to steal... It's bigger than that. He pulled out a folder thick with papers. I did some digging after you called. Riverside Capital Growth Partners isn't registered with the SEC. They're operating under something called a private placement exemption, which means they can raise money from investors without the same regulatory oversight as public funds. Is that legal? Technically, yes, if they follow specific rules. But Suzanne, I made some calls to colleagues in Philadelphia and New York. Nobody in legitimate finance has heard of this company. Their office address is a virtual mailbox service. Their listed board of directors includes 2 people who died 3 years ago and one who claims to have never heard of the company. The room seemed to tilt. How is that possible? It's not uncommon in investment fraud. You create the appearance of legitimacy. Fancy websites, professional documents, fake testimonials. Most victims never verify the details until it's too late. He leaned forward. Suzanne, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Kurt asked you about the farm? About selling or transferring ownership? I thought back over the past 18 months since Thomas died. Last Thanksgiving, he mentioned that the property taxes were getting expensive. He suggested I might want to downsize, maybe move into a retirement community. Beatrice said they'd looked at some lovely places in Lancaster. Did he ask about the trust Thomas set up? He doesn't know about it. Thomas never told him. Howard nodded slowly. That was wise. Suzanne, I think this investment scheme is phase 1 of a larger plan. Get you to voluntarily transfer your liquid assets. Then, once you're financially dependent, pressure you to sell the farm. If you resist, use guardianship proceedings to take control. But Kurt is my son. He wouldn't. Are you certain? Because the man who helped his wife forge your signature and who just testified to Adult Protective Services that you're incompetent, that's not the Kurt you raised. That's someone else. I felt tears burning behind my eyes but refused to let them fall. What do I do? First, we file a complaint with the Pennsylvania Securities Commission and the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Investment fraud crosses state lines, so it's federal. Second, we prepare a response to Tate's cease and desist letter that makes it clear you won't be intimidated. Third, we execute that power of attorney Thomas prepared, naming Robert as your agent, but only for the specific purpose of managing your affairs if you're ever truly incapacitated. Beatrice's lawyer threatened guardianship proceedings. Let him file. I'll fight it, and I'll win. But Suzanne, you need to understand, this is going to get ugly. They're going to attack your character, your memory, your judgment. They'll twist every innocent mistake into evidence of decline. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Thomas's letter, his voice in my nightmare, the trust he'd placed in me to protect our legacy. Yes, I'm prepared. Howard smiled grimly. Good, because we're going to war. I left his office with a briefcase full of documents and a sick feeling in my stomach. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Lancaster's downtown streets as I drove home, my mind racing through everything I'd learned. My phone rang. My new number, which I'd only given to Robert and Howard. I answered cautiously. Suzanne, it's Robert. I need you to check something for me. Look at the investment prospectus Beatrice gave you, page 17, the section about fund management fees. I pulled over into a drugstore parking lot and dug the document out of my purse. I'm looking at it now. Read the fine print at the bottom of the page. I squinted at the tiny text. Management fees are calculated as 2% of assets under management annually, plus 20% of profits above benchmark performance. That seems high, but she said, keep reading. The next sentence. Additional administrative fees may apply and will be disclosed in quarterly statements. I don't understand. Suzanne, those additional administrative fees are undefined. They could be anything. I've seen this language before, years ago, when I was asked to review an investment my cousin was considering. It was a Ponzi scheme. The administrative fees were how the operators extracted money while making it look like the fund was still performing. But Beatrice showed me testimonials, performance charts. All fake. Suzanne, I've spent the afternoon calling the phone numbers listed in her prospectus. Half are disconnected. The other half are voicemail boxes that are full. I contacted the Pennsylvania Securities Commission. They have no record of Riverside Capital Growth Partners. I even found 3 complaints filed against Beatrice personally from 2 years ago, all alleging investment fraud. The cases were settled quietly out of court. My hands gripped the steering wheel. Kurt must know. He couldn't not know. Maybe. Or maybe he's a victim too. Some con artists are very good at fooling their partners. But Suzanne, there's something else. I pulled Kurt and Beatrice's financial records, public information, tax liens, that sort of thing. They're drowning in debt. Their house has 2 mortgages, both underwater. Beatrice's Mercedes is leased. They have 6 credit cards maxed out. Total debt over $300,000. $300,000. The same amount they'd wanted from me. Exactly. Suzanne, I think this whole scheme was designed specifically to target you. The investment pitch, the pressure tactics, the timeline, it's all been orchestrated to extract enough money to save them from bankruptcy. And when you balked, they shifted to Plan B. Discredit you and take control through guardianship. I sat in the parking lot, watching normal people go about their normal lives, buying groceries, picking up prescriptions, completely unaware that my world was crumbling around me. What happens now? Now, we document everything and prepare for them to escalate. Suzanne, they're desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. As if summoning them by speaking their names, I saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot. Kurt's SUV. He parked 3 spaces away and got out, walking toward my car with determined strides. Robert, Kurt just found me. I need to go. Be careful. Record everything if you can. I ended the call and activated my phone's voice recorder, something Robert had taught me to do that morning. Kurt reached my window and knocked on the glass. I lowered it 2 inches. Mom, we need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea right now. Please, just 5 minutes. Can I get in? Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door. He slid in, and I could smell whiskey on his breath, though it was barely 5 o'clock. Mom, this has gotten out of control, he said, not looking at me. Beatrice is talking about pressing charges. Defamation, harassment, she's furious. I reported attempted fraud to my bank, Kurt. That's not defamation. That's protecting myself. But there was no fraud. You authorized those forms, you just don't remember. Mom, please, you need to see a doctor. This isn't normal. I saw a doctor 6 weeks ago for my annual checkup. Perfect cognitive function. Clean bill of health. Howard Brennan has the records. He turned to face me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Calculation. Howard's almost 80 years old. He's not exactly a neutral party. Mom, I've been talking to Elder Care Associates. They do comprehensive evaluations. They could see you tomorrow. Who recommended them? Beatrice? Does it matter? You need help. Kurt, answer me honestly. Are you in financial trouble? He went very still. What? Your house, your debts? Beatrice's business? Are you in trouble? That's none of your business. It is when your solution involves stealing from me. His face flushed. Nobody's stealing from you. You're paranoid and confused, and you're going to lose everything because you're too stubborn to admit you need help. When they put you in a home, and they will, Mom, because you can't take care of yourself anymore. What happens to this? He gestured vaguely. The farm, the money, everything Dad worked for? It'll go to lawyers and nursing care, and there'll be nothing left for your grandchildren. Thomas set up a trust. The farm goes directly to Ella and Mason when I die. You'll never control it. I saw the moment he realized I knew, really knew, about everything. His expression shifted from concern to something colder. You had no right to do that. Thomas did it. He knew. Knew what? That you'd try this. He warned me about Beatrice. About trusting family with money. Kurt's hands clenched into fists on his lap. Dad never liked Beatrice. He never gave her a chance, just like you. You both treated her like she wasn't good enough, like she was some kind of criminal. Your wife tried to wire $230,000 out of my account using a forged authorization. That makes her an actual criminal. You signed those forms. Then prove it. Show me security camera footage from the bank or witnesses who saw me sign. You can't, because I didn't. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Kurt reached for the door handle. You're making a terrible mistake, Mom. We're trying to help you, and you're treating us like enemies. Fine. When you're sitting alone in that farmhouse, broke and scared, don't call me. Kurt. He paused, half out of the car. I love you, but I won't let you destroy me to save yourself. If you're in trouble, I'll help you. Legitimately. But not like this. He got out without responding and walked back to his SUV. I watched him drive away, wondering when I'd lost my son and whether I'd ever get him back. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this, old woman. People have accidents every day, especially stubborn old people living alone on isolated farms. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Robert and Howard. Then I called the police again. This time, they took me more seriously. Officer Patricia Valdez arrived at my house 20 minutes later, a compact woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a notepad. Mrs. Foster, I understand you've received a threatening message. I showed her everything. The text, the emails, the forged documents, the Adult Protective Services report. She listened carefully, making notes. Ma'am, this looks like a coordinated effort to intimidate you. The text message is definitely a threat. I can file a report and document everything, but I need to be honest. Unless someone actually harms you, there's limited action we can take. So I wait until they hurt me? I'm not saying that. I'm saying build a case, document everything, get cameras installed around your property, change your locks. Consider a restraining order, though those can be hard to get in family situations. She paused. Mrs. Foster, I had a grandmother who went through something similar, family member trying to take her house. She felt alone and scared, and honestly, the system failed her. But she was tough, like you. She survived it. Did she keep her house? Officer Valdez smiled slightly. She did. And the family member who tried to steal it ended up in jail. Sometimes justice takes time, but it comes. After she left, I stood in my kitchen, looking at the home Thomas and I had built together. The worn countertops where I'd rolled pie dough for 40 years. The window over the sink where I'd watched Kurt play as a child. The table where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesday dinners. This was my life, my legacy, and I would not surrender it to criminals, even if they shared my blood. I called Robert back. I want to file criminal complaints against Beatrice and Kurt. Fraud, identity theft, whatever applies. I want this documented officially. Suzanne, are you sure? Once you file criminal complaints against your own son? I'm sure. Thomas warned me to be strong. I'm being strong. All right. I'll start the paperwork tonight. And Suzanne? You might want to stay somewhere else for a few days. A hotel, a friend's house. Just until this calms down. This is my home. I'm not leaving. After I hung up, I went through the house locking every door and window. I checked Thomas's gun safe. He'd kept a hunting rifle and a pistol for the rare times we'd had trouble with coyotes. I'd never fired either weapon, and I wouldn't start now. But I made sure the safe was still secure, just in case. The sun was setting, painting the farm in shades of orange and gold. From my bedroom window, I could see the fields Thomas had loved, now rented to a neighboring farmer. The old barn where Kurt had learned to ride a bike. The apple orchard where we'd picked fruit every autumn. So many memories. So much life. And now, possibly, so much danger. My phone rang one more time. Howard Brennan, his voice urgent. Suzanne, I just received a courtesy call from the courthouse. Beatrice has filed an emergency petition for guardianship. The hearing is Monday morning, 9 o'clock. They're alleging you're a danger to yourself and others. They have 3 witnesses prepared to testify. 3 witnesses? Kurt, Beatrice, and apparently a Dr. Gregory Patton who conducted a remote evaluation based on family interviews and claims you show clear signs of dementia. I've never even met Dr. Patton. I know, it's junk science. But Suzanne, they're moving fast and using every tactic available. This is their final push. If they can get emergency guardianship approved, they can freeze your accounts, take control of your medical decisions, and potentially force you into assisted living, all before we can mount a proper defense. What do? We prepare. I need you in my office tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock sharp. We're going to build a case that makes their petition look like the fraud it is. And Suzanne, You're going to need to tell me everything. Every detail, every secret, everything Thomas knew that I don't. Because we're walking into a courtroom in 72 hours, and we need to be ready for war. I looked out at the darkening farm, at the home I refused to surrender, and made myself a promise. I would fight. I would win. And when this was over, my son would have to live with what he'd tried to do to his own mother. That would be punishment enough. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with wood paneling that had darkened with age and fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. I sat beside Howard Brennan at the defendant's table, though in guardianship proceedings I reminded myself, I wasn't technically a defendant. I was the subject, the person whose life hung in the balance. Across the aisle, Beatrice sat perfectly composed in a dove-gray suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. Kurt sat beside her, looking haggard and avoiding my gaze. Richard Tate shuffled papers with practiced efficiency, occasionally leaning over to whisper to his clients. Judge Catherine Moreland entered at precisely 9 o'clock. She was in her 50s, with steel-gray hair and a reputation for being thorough but fair. Howard had assured me this was good news. Moreland didn't rubber-stamp guardianship petitions the way some judges did. This is an emergency hearing on the petition for guardianship of Suzanne Ann Foster, the judge said, settling behind the bench. Mr. Tate, you filed the petition. Present your case. Tate stood, his voice smooth and confident. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a straightforward matter of protecting a vulnerable senior citizen from her own declining cognitive abilities. Mrs. Suzanne Foster is 72 years old and widowed. Over the past several months, she has exhibited increasingly concerning behavior, paranoid accusations against family members, inability to remember significant events, poor financial judgment, and most alarmingly, claims of seeing her deceased husband. I felt my face flush, but Howard's hand on my arm kept me silent. We have documentation from Adult Protective Services, testimony from family members who interact with her regularly, and a professional evaluation from Dr. Gregory Patton, a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist. The evidence is clear. Mrs. Foster requires a guardian to protect her from financial exploitation and to ensure she receives proper care. Mr. Brennan? Judge Moreland looked at Howard. Howard stood slowly, using his age to his advantage, making himself appear measured and wise rather than hasty. Your Honor, what we have here is not a woman in cognitive decline, but a woman defending herself against coordinated fraud. Every piece of evidence Mr. Tate will present has an innocent explanation that my client can articulate clearly. The real question this court must answer is, who's exploiting whom? The judge's eyebrow raised slightly. That's quite an allegation, Mr. Brennan. It's quite a case, Your Honor. I request permission to present evidence of attempted financial fraud, identity theft, and witness intimidation before this court considers stripping my client of her fundamental rights. Tate interjected. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid conspiracy thinking that demonstrates Mrs. Foster's impairment. Mr. Tate, you'll have your chance to respond. Judge Moreland made a note. I'll hear from both sides. Mr. Tate, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Kurt Foster. My son walked to the witness stand, still not looking at me. After being sworn in, he folded his hands in his lap like he used to do as a child when he was in trouble. Mr. Foster, please describe your relationship with your mother, Tate began. She's my mom, my only parent now. After Dad died, I've tried to help her manage the farm and her finances because she seemed overwhelmed. And what changes have you observed in her behavior? Kurt finally looked at me, and I saw what might have been regret in his eyes, or guilt. She forgets things. Important things. My daughter Ella's birthday, appointments, conversations we've had. Last month she called me 3 times in one day asking the same question about the water bill. That was a lie, a complete fabrication. But how could I prove it? Has she made accusations against family members? Yes. She's accused my wife Beatrice of trying to steal from her. It's not true. Beatrice was trying to help her invest her savings so she wouldn't lose everything to inflation. But Mom became convinced it was some kind of scam. And did your mother ever mention seeing your deceased father? Kurt hesitated. She told me she had a nightmare about him, but she talked about it like it was real, like he'd actually warned her about Beatrice. It scared me. No further questions, Your Honor. Howard stood for cross-examination. Mr. Foster, you love your mother, correct? Of course. And you want what's best for her? Yes. Then why did you help your wife submit a forged authorization to access your mother's bank accounts? Tate shot to his feet. Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Your Honor, I have documentation from Lancaster First National Bank showing that an authorization bearing Mrs. Foster's signature was submitted to request account access. That authorization was submitted on a day when Mrs. Foster was attending a funeral and never went near a computer or bank branch. Judge Moreland leaned forward. I'll allow the question. Mr. Foster, answer please. Kurt's face had gone pale. I don't know anything about a forged authorization. Beatrice handled the investment paperwork. I just helped Mom set up her computer and online banking because she wasn't familiar with technology. You helped her set up passwords and security questions? Yes, but... And your wife had access to that information? I might have mentioned them to her. I don't remember exactly. Mr. Foster, are you aware that you and your wife are $300,000 in debt? Objection! Tate was on his feet again. Relevance? Howard turned to the judge. Your Honor, the petitioners are requesting guardianship over a woman whose liquid assets total approximately $230,000. Almost exactly what they need to pay off their debts. That's extremely relevant to their motives. I'll allow it. Mr. Foster, answer the question. Kurt's jaw tightened. We've had some financial difficulties. That doesn't mean we're trying to steal from my mother. But you did report her to Adult Protective Services as incompetent, didn't you? Because I'm worried about her. And if this court grants guardianship to your wife, she'll have legal control over your mother's assets, correct? That's not why we're doing this. Answer yes or no, please. Yes, but no further questions. As Kurt left the stand, I could see his hands shaking. Judge Moreland was watching him carefully, her expression unreadable. Tate called Beatrice next. She took the stand with perfect composure, her voice steady and sympathetic as she described her concerns about my mental state. I've tried so hard to help Suzanne, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. After Thomas died, she was so lost. I spent hours explaining the investment opportunity, answering all her questions. She was enthusiastic at first, but then she started becoming confused, claiming she'd never agreed to anything. It broke my heart. Mrs. Foster, can you describe your business, Riverside Capital Growth Partners? It's a private investment fund I established 5 years ago. We have 17 investors and have consistently delivered returns of 15 to 20% annually. I offered Suzanne a spot because I care about her financial security. Howard's cross-examination was devastating. Mrs. Beatrice Foster, is your company registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission? We operate under a private placement exemption. Yes or no, please? No, but... Is it registered with the Pennsylvania Securities Commission? No, but that's not required for... Do you have a physical office? We operate virtually to minimize overhead costs. So no physical office. Do you have any employees besides yourself? I work with independent contractors. So no employees. Mrs. Foster, can you provide the court with audited financial statements for your fund? For the first time, Beatrice's composure cracked. We don't do external audits. That's standard for private placements. Can you provide bank statements showing the investment accounts? Those are confidential. Can you provide contact information for even one of your 17 investors so they can verify your claims? Client confidentiality prevents... Mrs. Foster, have you ever been investigated for investment fraud? Her face went white. That was a misunderstanding that was resolved? You settled 3 complaints alleging fraud, didn't you? Paying a total of $90,000 to victims who claimed you'd misrepresented investment opportunities? Those were nuisance settlements. My lawyers advised, no further questions, Your Honor. Beatrice practically fled the witness stand. Tate was conferring urgently with her and Kurt, his earlier confidence visibly shaken. Mr. Tate, do you have additional witnesses? Judge Moreland asked. Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Gregory Patton, by telephone. The bailiff set up a speakerphone, and Dr. Patton's voice filled the courtroom. Authoritative, clinical, completely certain. He described conducting a comprehensive evaluation based on family interviews and concluded I exhibited clear signs of cognitive impairment consistent with early-stage dementia. Howard's cross-examination was brief but effective. Dr. Patton, did you ever meet Mrs. Foster in person? No, but remote evaluations are perfectly valid. Did you conduct any cognitive testing, memory assessments, brain scans? Based on the family reports, such testing wasn't necessary. Did you review her medical records? The family didn't provide. Did you speak with her personal physician, Dr. Patricia Hammond, who conducted a full cognitive evaluation just 6 weeks ago? I wasn't aware she had seen another physician. Dr. Patton, you charged $4,000 for this evaluation, correct? My fees are consistent with industry standards. And you were paid directly by Mrs. Beatrice Foster, the petitioner who stands to gain financial control if guardianship is granted? Silence on the phone line. Then, I was compensated for my professional services, yes. No further questions. Judge Moreland looked distinctly unimpressed. Mr. Brennan, do you have witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. I call Suzanne Foster. My legs felt unsteady as I walked to the witness stand, but I kept my back straight and my voice clear as I took the oath. I would not let them see fear. Howard led me through my testimony carefully. I explained the investment proposal, my initial interest, and then my nightmare about Thomas. Mrs. Foster, do you believe your deceased husband actually spoke to you? No. I believe my subconscious mind recognized something wrong and processed it while I slept. I'm not delusional, Mr. Brennan. I'm cautious. I described discovering the forged authorization, the attempted wire transfer, the threatening text message. I recounted my conversations with the bank's fraud department, with Officer Valdez, with Robert. Mrs. Foster, the petitioners claim you forgot your granddaughter's birthday. Ella's birthday is September 25th. I sent her a card on September 18th with a $50 check. Kurt has the date wrong. He's thinking of his nephew on Beatrice's side, whose birthday is September 15th. Can you prove you sent the card? I have the canceled check and the receipt from the post office. I keep records of everything. Howard presented the documents. Judge Moreland examined them carefully. Mrs. Foster, why do you believe your family is doing this? I looked at Kurt for the first time since the hearing began. Because they're desperate. They're drowning in debt, and they saw my savings as a lifeline. I don't think Kurt wanted to hurt me initially. I think Beatrice convinced him it was helping both of us. She'd get the investment capital she needed. I'd get returns on my money. But it was never a real investment. It was a Ponzi scheme that would have collapsed within weeks, taking my life savings with it. And when you refused, they couldn't accept no for an answer, so they decided to take control another way. Tate's cross-examination tried to rattle me, suggesting I was paranoid, confused, unable to distinguish reality from suspicion. But I'd spent 3 days preparing with Howard, and I answered every question calmly, providing documentation for every claim. Finally, Judge Moreland called a brief recess. When we reconvened, her expression was stern. I've heard enough. Mr. Tate, your petition for emergency guardianship is denied. Mrs. Foster has demonstrated clear cognitive capacity, sound judgment, and frankly, more financial acumen than many people half her age. What she describes as attempted fraud appears, based on the evidence presented, to be exactly that. Tate stood. Your Honor, we intend to appeal. You may certainly try. But I'm also ordering an investigation into Riverside Capital Growth Partners. Mrs. Beatrice Foster, you are to cease all investment solicitation activities pending review by the Securities Commission, and I'm issuing a restraining order. Mrs. Beatrice Foster and Mr. Kurt Foster are to have no contact with Mrs. Suzanne Foster except through legal counsel. Beatrice gasped. Kurt dropped his head into his hands. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. This court does not take kindly to what appears to be coordinated elder abuse and fraud. Judge Moreland looked directly at me. Mrs. Foster, you have my sincere apology that our system allowed you to be victimized this way. I hope you'll accept the court's protection going forward. Thank you, Your Honor. As the judge left the bench, I sat motionless, letting the victory wash over me. Howard gripped my shoulder. "You did it, Suzanne. You won." Across the aisle, Beatrice was hissing urgently at Tate, while Kurt sat frozen, staring at nothing. As they gathered their things to leave, Kurt looked at me one final time. I saw it all in his face. Shame, regret, realization of what he'd done and what he'd lost. I wanted to feel triumphant, but all I felt was tired and sad. He'd chosen Beatrice over me, chosen money over integrity, chosen easy lies over hard truth, and now he would have to live with that choice. As Howard and I left the courthouse, I breathed in the cold November air and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Safe. The battle was won. But the war, the real work of healing and rebuilding, was just beginning. 3 weeks after the hearing, I stood at my kitchen window watching the first snow of the season dust the fields. The farm looked peaceful, almost pristine, under its white blanket. No hint of the storm that had recently passed through my life. Robert sat at the kitchen table behind me, reviewing bank statements and legal documents. He'd been staying in the guest room since the hearing, helping me reorganize my finances and security. His presence had been a comfort, a reminder that not all family was treacherous. "The FBI contacted me yesterday," he said, looking up from a spreadsheet. "They've identified at least 12 other victims of Beatrice's scheme, total losses approaching $2 million. I turned from the window. $2 million? She'd been running variations of this con for 7 years, moving between states, changing company names. Suzanne, you weren't her first target. You were just the first one who fought back." I sat down across from him, accepting the cup of coffee he'd poured. "Have you heard anything about Kurt?" Robert's expression softened. "He's cooperating with investigators. His lawyer worked out a deal. Full testimony against Beatrice in exchange for reduced charges. Looks like he'll face probation and restitution rather than prison time. He was her victim too," I said quietly. "Maybe. Or maybe he was willfully blind because it was convenient. Either way, he's facing consequences." I thought about my son, about the boy who'd helped Thomas fix fence posts and learned to drive on these same country roads. Somewhere along the way, that boy had become a man who could betray his own mother. I still didn't fully understand how or why. "The children," I said. "Ella and Mason, have they tried to contact me?" "Kurt's keeping them away. He told them you're sick and need space." Robert's jaw tightened. That's his shame talking. He can't face them knowing what he tried to do. My heart ached. Ella was 16, Mason 14, old enough to sense something was wrong, but too young to understand the full complexity of adult betrayals. They were innocent in all this, and they were losing their grandmother because of their parents' choices. I'm going to write them letters, I decided, for Howard to keep in trust until they're adults, so they'll know the truth someday and know I never stopped loving them. Robert nodded approval. "That's wise. And Suzanne, there's something else we need to discuss. The farm." I'd been dreading this conversation. "The property taxes are due in January. I've reviewed everything. With the trust Thomas set up and the rental income from the neighboring farmer using your fields, you can maintain the property indefinitely. But Suzanne, you're 72 years old. This is 100 acres requiring constant maintenance. Are you sure you want to stay here alone? This is my home, Thomas's home, our legacy. I understand that. But what if we explored options that let you keep the farm without the burden of maintaining it yourself? You could convert the barn into a wedding venue. I've seen Lancaster Properties do that successfully. Or lease the house to a farm manager who'd maintain the property in exchange for reduced rent. The trust ensures the land stays in the family, but that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your quality of life. I considered this, watching the snow fall. Thomas and I had poured our lives into this land, but Robert was right. I was maintaining it alone now, and some days the burden felt overwhelming. "Let me think about it," I said finally. The doorbell interrupted us. Through the window, I saw Officer Patricia Valdez on the porch, stamping snow from her boots. I let her in, offering coffee, which she declined. "Mrs. Foster, I wanted to update you personally. The district attorney has filed formal charges against Beatrice Foster: wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, and investment fraud. They're also investigating Kurt's involvement. Though as your brother-in-law mentioned, he's cooperating. What will happen to her? If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 10 to 15 years federal prison, plus restitution to all victims. The FBI is still tracing where the money went. Offshore accounts, probably. Most of it's gone. I absorbed this. 15 years. Beatrice was 42 years old. She'd be nearly 60 when she got out, if she served the full sentence. How do you feel about that? Officer Valdez asked gently. I don't know. Relieved that she can't hurt anyone else. Sad that it came to this. Angry that my son was part of it. I paused. Grateful that I trusted my instincts. That nightmare about your husband probably saved your life savings. It wasn't really about Thomas. It was about me recognizing danger and listening to that recognition. Valdez smiled. Well, whatever it was, it worked. You're one of the lucky ones, Mrs. Foster. Most elder fraud victims never recover. They're too ashamed to report it, or they're successfully discredited by family members. You fought back, and you won. That takes real courage. After she left, I returned to the window. The snow was falling harder now, transforming the farm into something ethereal and new. I thought about Thomas, about the letter he'd left me, about how he'd protected me even after death. I miss you, I whispered to the empty room. But I'm okay. You knew I would be. Robert appeared beside me, his reflection joining mine in the glass. You know what impresses me most about all this? What? You never became bitter. You never let them turn you into something you're not. Vengeful, paranoid, cruel. You stayed yourself. That's rare. I had good examples. Thomas, you, Howard, people who showed me that integrity matters more than victory. Speaking of Howard, he called while Valdez was here. The judge formally dismissed the guardianship petition with prejudice. It can't be refiled. Your autonomy is permanently secured. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It's really over. The legal part, yes. The emotional part, that takes longer. He was right. That night, alone in the house after Robert had gone to bed, I pulled out stationery and began writing letters to my grandchildren. Dear Ella, by the time you read this, you'll be an adult, capable of understanding complexities that seem impossible now. I want you to know that I love you, that I never stopped loving you, and that the distance between us was never your fault. Your father made choices that hurt our family. Your mother made choices that were criminal. But you are not defined by their mistakes. You are your own person, capable of your own integrity. This farm will be yours someday, yours and Mason's. Not because of wealth or inheritance, but because it represents something important. The idea that we can build something lasting, that our choices matter, that land and legacy are worth protecting. I hope when you walk these fields as an adult, you'll think of your great-grandfather and grandmother, of your grandfather Thomas, and yes, of me. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes, but we tried to build something good. That's all any of us can do. With all my love, Grandma Suzanne. I wrote similar letters to Mason, to Kurt, even one to Beatrice that I knew she'd never read. I poured out everything I couldn't say in court or through lawyers. My disappointment, my pain, my forgiveness, my hope. Writing them felt like healing. The next morning, I called Jenny Morrison's daughter Patricia. Jenny had been my closest friend, dead now for 2 months, and I'd been too consumed with my own crisis to properly grieve. Patricia, I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch sometime. I've been thinking about your mother and wanted to share some memories. Her voice brightened. Mrs. Foster, I'd love that. Actually, I've been meaning to call you. Mom left something for you in her will, a box of letters and photographs. She said you'd know what to do with them. We made plans for the following week. After hanging up, I realized something had shifted. I'd spent weeks focused on defense, on protection, on survival. Now I could start thinking about living again. Robert left the next day, returning to Philadelphia, but promising to visit monthly. Call me if you need anything. And Suzanne, consider my suggestions about the farm. You don't have to decide today, but don't wait too long. Life is short. I spent the following days in a kind of peaceful solitude, reorganizing the house, Going through Thomas's belongings I'd been unable to face before, making lists of repairs the farm needed. I called 3 contractors about converting the barn and met with a lawyer about leasing options. I was taking control of my future, not just protecting my past. 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an unexpected visitor. Kurt's car pulled into the driveway, and my heart clenched. The restraining order had been modified to allow supervised contact, but we'd had none since the hearing. He knocked hesitantly. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Mom," his voice cracked. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Not because my lawyer said to, not to help my case, because it's true." I studied his face. Thinner than before, with new lines around his eyes. "How much did you know, Kurt?" "At first? Nothing. Beatrice told me it was legitimate, and I believed her because I wanted to. We needed money desperately, and she promised this would fix everything." He swallowed hard. "But by the time she pitched the investment to you, I suspected. Little inconsistencies, explanations that didn't quite add up. I should have investigated. I should have protected you. Instead, I convinced myself I was protecting my family. By destroying your mother? By being a coward." Tears streamed down his face. "I told myself you'd be fine, that you didn't need all that money anyway, that Beatrice would invest it properly and everyone would benefit. I lied to myself until I believed the lies. And when you started asking questions, I panicked. I thought if you were declared incompetent, the court would protect you from yourself. I actually believed that, Mom. I believed my own lies. Do you understand what you almost did? I would have lost everything. My home, my dignity, my freedom. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing. I can't take it back. I can't fix it. I just wanted you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. I love you. And I understand if you never want to see me again." We stood in silence, snow falling between us, marking the space where trust used to be. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Kurt. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I do know this. You're still my son. And if you're serious about changing, about becoming someone worthy of the name your father gave you, then I want to hear about it. Not now. Maybe not for a long time. But someday." He nodded, unable to speak. "The children," I continued. "They're innocent. When your legal situation is resolved, when you've proven you're trustworthy again, I want to see them. Will you allow that?" "Yes. God, yes. Mom, they miss you so much. I miss them too. Tell them Grandma loves them and is waiting." After he left, I closed the door and leaned against it, exhausted but somehow lighter. I'd set boundaries. I'd acknowledged pain without letting it consume me. I'd left space for possible redemption while refusing to be victimized again. That evening, I walked through the farm as the sun set, golden light streaming across the snow-covered fields. I visited Thomas's grave in the small cemetery where 4 generations of his family rested. "You warned me," I said to the stone marker. "But more than that, you prepared me. The trust, the letter, the examples you set. You taught me to be strong without being hard, protective without being paranoid, loving without being foolish." The wind rustled through the bare trees, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. "You did good, Suzanne. You did real good." I stood there as the sun disappeared, turning the sky pink and purple, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The farm would endure. The legacy would continue. And I would live the rest of my life on my own terms, protected by wisdom earned through fire, carrying scars that proved I'd survived. Christmas came quietly. Robert visited, bringing homemade cookies and stories about his accounting firm. Patricia Morrison came for lunch, sharing memories of Jenny and delivering the box of letters. 40 years of correspondence between Jenny and me, documenting our friendship from young mothers to widows. "She wanted you to have them," Patricia said. "She said you'd know their value." I spent the evening reading through them, laughing at our younger selves, crying at passages where Jenny had offered comfort during hard times. These letters were proof that real relationships, built on honesty and mutual respect, could last a lifetime. They were the opposite of what Beatrice had offered. Manipulation disguised as family. On New Year's Eve, I made a decision. I called the contractor about the barn conversion and the lawyer about leasing the house. I would transform the farm from a burden into a legacy that could sustain itself and benefit others. The barn would become a wedding venue, hosting young couples starting their own journeys. The house would be leased to a young farming family who needed space to grow. And I would move into Thomas's workshop, a smaller building I could convert into a comfortable cottage, keeping me on the land I loved without overwhelming responsibility. It was a compromise that honored both past and future. By February, the plans were underway. By March, I had tenants, a couple in their 30s with 3 children who reminded me of Kurt at that age, full of energy and hope. By April, the barn renovation was nearly complete. I stood in the transformed space one afternoon, sunlight streaming through the new windows, and imagined the celebrations that would happen here. Weddings, anniversaries, gatherings of people choosing love and commitment. It felt right. That evening, Howard Brennan called with final news. Suzanne, Beatrice pleaded guilty to all charges. She'll serve 12 years, with eligibility for parole after 8. Kurt received 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution requirements. He'll be paying back victims for the rest of his life. And the other victims? We recovered about 40% of the stolen funds. It's not everything, but it's something. And several victims told me to thank you. By fighting back, you exposed the scheme before more people were hurt. After we hung up, I walked outside to my new cottage. It was small but perfect. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room with a fireplace. Through the window, I could see the main house where the young family lived, lights glowing warm in the gathering dusk. I'd lost my son, at least temporarily. I'd lost my innocence about family loyalty. I'd lost months of peace to fear and fighting. But I'd kept my home, my dignity, my freedom, and most importantly, I'd kept myself, the woman Thomas had loved, the woman I'd always been, the woman I would continue to be. I thought about that nightmare that had started everything, Thomas's voice warning me. It hadn't been supernatural. It had been survival instinct, pattern recognition, subconscious wisdom rising to consciousness. It had been me, recognizing danger and trusting myself enough to act. That, I realized, was the real victory. Not the courtroom triumph, not the avoided fraud. The victory was learning that at 72 years old, I could still trust my judgment, still fight for what mattered, still protect myself and what I loved. Age wasn't weakness. It was accumulated wisdom, earned strength, survival made conscious. I poured myself tea and settled into Thomas's old reading chair, now in my new cottage. Through the window, I watched my tenants' children playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. This was legacy, not holding on to everything forever, but transforming it into something that could continue, adapt, serve new purposes while honoring old values. The farm would outlive me, passing to Ella and Mason when they were ready. They would make their own choices, their own mistakes, their own victories. And somewhere in the barn that would soon host its first wedding, or in the fields that would grow new crops under new hands, or in the cottage where I would spend my remaining years, they would feel the presence of what their great-grandparents had built. Not just land or buildings, but the idea that some things are worth protecting, that integrity matters more than easy money, that wisdom earned through age and experience is a real and valuable form of power. I raised my teacup in a silent toast, to Thomas, to Robert, to Howard, to Officer Valdez, to everyone who'd helped me survive, and to myself for being strong enough to fight, wise enough to win, and human enough to hope for redemption, even when it seemed impossible. The sun set over the farm, painting everything in gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new moments requiring courage. But tonight, I was simply Suzanne Foster, 72 years old, sitting in my home, on my land, living my life on my own terms. And that was enough. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.